Okay, probably figured out what's going on by now. One of them is I did part 6 and I have no idea where it went. So I got to redo it. He looked. Mark's second grenade detonated, snapping him back to reality. He looked to see what had happened and was terrified at the results. The explosive had landed on the bridge and gone off, but somehow it was still standing. Either it was constructed much more sturdily than he thought, or the frags weren't very effective on wooden targets. He heard another bullet zip by his head, and he looked to see if the guys in the trench were firing again. It wasn't them. It was the guys on the motorcycles. They'd be crossing the bridge in a matter of seconds. Mark's first thought was to run back to the cover of the house, but with his wound, the MZBs would likely overtake him before he got there. He quickly glanced from side to side to see if there was anything close that might at least provide some concealment. There wasn't even a small bush. He looked back at the rapidly approaching MZBs. They were bouncing across the last few yards of dirt before traversing the drawbridge into his kingdom. The uneven soil had kept them from getting a good shot off at him, but once they reached the smoothness of the bridge and then the street, they'd cut him to ribbons. Mark could hear his friends behind him firing at the marauders. They weren't having any effect on the bobbing targets. He could hear them calling him to run back to them, but it was strange. He could only barely hear them. "Oh, no, you don't," he said to the invaders, but only he heard it. He stood up and unslung the rifle off of his back in a smooth motion as if he'd rehearsed it 100 times for a movie scene. The short rifle came up easily to his shoulder as he moved the safety to the fire position. Mark took aim at the lead biker and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked and the muzzle climbed as 8 or 9 rounds erupted from the weapon. Mark mentally kicked himself for forgetting the rifle was full auto. He aimed again at the biker, who was now just on Mark's side of the bridge, and squeezed off a short burst. By starting a little low, the rifle climbed, so Mark's last shot was right in the upper torso. The motorcycle fell over. Mark took aim at the next target and fired another 3 or 4 shot burst. The bike and driver went over the side of the bridge, and Mark repeated for the next rider, who went over the opposite side. Mark was oblivious to the bullets screaming by him and continued to shoot the MZBs as they attempted to cross the bridge. It didn't feel real. It was almost as if he was playing some sort of video game and he was racking up the points by the boatload. On the 7th biker, his magazine went dry and he reached for a new one. He dumped the empty one on the ground and seated the fresh one just as the next biker was rolling across the wooden bridge. Mark thought it strange they'd continue to come as he leveled one after the other. He pulled the little commie rifle back into position and let off another burst. This time, the biker fell off, and the bike turned onto its side right in the middle of the bridge. That blockage made the other bike stop on the far side. Mark could see the trucks were coming to a halt, and the men in them were pouring out. Several of them dashed toward the big motorcycle blocking the bridge. Mark took aim and sprayed them with 7.62 millimeter bullets as they rushed forward. Only one of the men made it to the bike, and his quest to remove the blockade was cut short. He landed on top of the motorcycle, and it began to burn. Mark figured he must have punched a hole in the gas tank, and some gas must have ignited on a part of the engine. That would keep them from using the bridge, he thought. He could see the rest of the men who'd been in the trucks making for the trench. He ripped off several bursts, and his rifle's magazine ran out of ammo for the second time. Mark reached for another and again became aware of his team calling his name. He could see the first of the MZBs jumping down into the ditch, and he knew it was only a matter of time before they'd get a good shot at him. In fact, he thought, I've been real lucky not to be hit. He decided it was time to get out of Dodge. As he half ran, half hobbled back to his friends, he could see the muzzle flashes and hear the reports of their weapons laying down covering fire for him. He also heard several shots zinging by his ears, but he made it back to the corner of the house without any additional injuries.